Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back again, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. What I'm going to do today, I wanted to share with you, I go over so many materials and resources every day and every week because that's really, I think, the most valuable way that I could stay on top of things for all my clients. So I go through many trade publications, but I also go through many retail publications, which are sometimes available just to the general public, like Money Magazine or Kiplinger, things like that, in the Wall Street Journal, and then I'll go online. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is part of the value of our services, and I think any financial planner services are, we are a compilation sometimes of collected resources from all over. So while you're out visiting the grandkids or working at your jobs, we're usually busy working, accumulating information, and updating information, staying abreast on the most current changes. So we're a good consolidation resources for all of you. Well, what I wanted to do today, I printed them off. I subscribed to Kiplinger's retirement report and also Kiplinger's tax report. And I wanted to share today some of the articles and all that are in the Kiplinger's retirement report and urge you to maybe, if you're in retirement or nearing retirement, to consider subscribing to the Kiplinger's retirement report or any of their reports, including their magazine, because I find it quite valuable. So I'll just start right away on how versatile these articles are, about how valuable they are to me in sharing with clients, and I'll share them with you too. So I won't hit on all the articles, but as I go through here, there were some that I found of interest and I wanted to share them with you. The one, I brought up most of this information on prior shows, but you may remember I talked about the Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract, or QLAC. Now, I haven't talked about this for about a year. This is a fairly new provision in the tax code that for those of you who have retirement plans where you have to take IRAs, minimum distributions, starting age 70 and a half, that there is a provision that got opened up in the tax code just recently that you could take up to $125,000 of an IRA account and convert it or purchase a qualified longevity annuity contract, which means on that portion of your retirement IRA assets, no 70.5% required minimum distribution is required until age 85. So there you're avoiding some of the taxable income that we sometimes want to avoid still at age 70.5, because all the taxable income you receive has other implications. Not only the income tax you might earn on that additional income that, again, many of you don't need nor want, but it also impacts Social Security, whether more of your Social Security is taxed, and it could subject you into higher regular income tax brackets. It could knock you off of PACE and other programs that are income-based, and it can also hurt you on the Medicare tax. So we do sometimes apply the QLAC, or Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract, as a tax planning strategy later in life and to preserve a legacy. So just to refresh your memory that exists, and the Kiplinger Retirement Report did go over it in one of their later issues on how to produce income, actually, because it is an income-oriented producing vehicle later in life, not to strategically choose when to get that income. Now, the retirement report also goes into questions and answers, and I wanted to get into some of these questions and answers because I've talked about them in prior shows, so I want to use some of these questions as refreshers. Remember, we've talked about gifting And how much, the question is always asked, are we allowed to gift in any year to someone else? So we've talked about this even in recent shows. You're allowed to gift up to $14,000 a year from any one person to another person. So you're probably familiar with that if you've been watching the show long enough or listening on the radio. But what the issue is that most people forget, or many are unaware of it all and have never learned, unless you have watched and listened to my show. The question in here says, paying for tuitions for grandkids. And it says, this is somebody who wrote in, and this is a question and answer, and it says, in August you reported that paying tuition directly to a college for a grandchild does not count toward the $14,000 annual gift tax exclusion. Is that true? And the answer is, tuition paid directly to an elementary or a secondary school, as well as to a college, on behalf of someone else, is not considered a gift for purposes of the federal gift tax. So it does not affect the $14,000 annual gift tax exclusion. Okay? So we did talk about that, and this article doesn't go on to say, but I need to. That also applies to health care costs or expenses applied directly for an individual, on behalf of an individual, paid directly to the institution, the medical institution. So in this case, you can't give the child money to pay their tuition, and you can't give the parents or child money to pay their hospital bills. You have to pay it to the institution directly, but you can't just make a contribution directly to the school or the hospital. It has to be on behalf of that individual. So when you're paying medical bills, you may have to say, I need this allocated, that it's not a donation to the hospital. It's to specifically pay the medical bills on behalf of this individual. Now, for the rest of you, sometimes you'll see donations and charities being collected for someone's medical bills, and you'll donate $1,000 or something like that. You need to inquire with the family that's hosting the donation cause and say, hey, can I pay directly? Would you mind? Instead of making a donation to the charity and getting a charitable deduction for it, I don't need the charitable deduction. I'd rather, however, donate directly to the charity so it's not subject to the gifting limitations for the year. So you can see, if we make donations, we get, maybe if it's a non-profit foundation or organization, we get charitable donation write-offs. But if we make payments directly to a nonprofit on behalf of payment of a bill, we don't get that donation charity write-off as much, but we do avoid the gifting strategy. So you have to do tax planning and see which strategies, as complex as they are, apply best to your personal situation. That's where we as financial planners come in, because it's hard to do that on your own, as we've talked about before. Now, here's another one. Question in here. Disclaiming an IRA. The question is, I was named as the sole beneficiary of my mother's IRA. I have 4 siblings and want to share it with them. My mother was 90 and I'm 62. Can I disclaim the IRA and have it passed to her estate? Now, again, we've talked about, before I get into this answer, we've talked about when you have anything go to an estate, and it's an IRA, as was pointed out here, when you name the estate, or by disclaiming, have it go to the estate, if the institution will allow it, now you're subjecting it to probate and publicity and delays, and also be careful there. But here's their answer. Maybe. But first you should check with the IRA sponsor. The account rules might specify who gets the money if there is no beneficiary, because if you disclaim, it goes to the next beneficiaries in line. If there is no beneficiary, most institutions, but not all, direct the money to the recipient's estate, the owner's estate of the IRA. But some don't. Some might say to the beneficiaries' estates. You have to be very careful here. But anyway, the article goes on to say, Also, your state's law might have something to say about this issue. If the IRA goes to the estate, the assets might be distributed. Well, this says would be distributed, but every state's different, so I'm substituting might be distributed according to your mother's will, or if she didn't have a will, her state's intestate rules. Ouch, huh? So, do you see how complicated this gets? Part of the benefit of financial planning and hiring a financial planner and having one at all times is having a resource to bounce off questions like this and getting research done rather than trying to do this on your own. But that's an issue on disclaiming an estate or disclaiming an IRA distribution. And I've seen that also. We might have a husband and a wife situation, and the husband's living and the wife's in a nursing home, and the wife's living in the husband goes into a nursing home, and they forget to change beneficiaries. So that means any assets in some cases are now being willed, or the beneficiary means the spouse in a nursing home might be receiving the whole IRA distribution on the death of the spouse that was at home. And the families might want to do some beneficiary planning, saying, wait a minute, we need to rewrite our wills and not have the mom or dad in a nursing home receive the family's money, right? Because they're already maybe on Medicaid. So there are many issues here. There's another question here, taxes on an annuity. If I purchase an immediate annuity and then I get into the issue of deferred annuity, what happens on the money that's already been taxed and all? This is so complex, folks. But one of the issues is when we have annuities, they can sometimes be in IRAs, they could sometimes be purchased outside of IRAs, and then thirdly, they could sometimes be actual immediate annuities, which means turned on for income for life already. The tax consequences are drastically different for every type of case, and sometimes even within each product. So I wanted to go through that with you. And then what we got into, the one question they had here, donating U.S. savings bonds. I just thought I'd touch on that because it jogged my memory on U.S. savings bonds are really tough. I hear a lot of people say a lot of different things, but technically, U.S. savings bonds, you can't rename those to a charity, and that's what this article goes on to answer. So that's one of the issues there. Now, another issue in one of these issues was the retirement report, September 2016, the Kiplinger's retirement report, making the most of an inherited IRA. Now, an inherited IRA can be a stretch IRA or not. But typically when we use the terms inherited IRA, we mean stretch IRA, which means a person or individual other than a spouse, because spouses automatically enjoy the benefit of inheriting an IRA as their own and not necessarily being required to pay tax on the whole amount of the proceeds all at once, but rather being able to stretch them out over their lifetime. So it's the same thing now, since this inherited or stretch IRA, or beneficiary IRA as it's sometimes called, provision came out about 10 or so years ago saying anyone at any age, if they're named properly as a designated beneficiary on someone else's IRA, can, if they elect, receive and inherit the IRA proceeds, defer taxes, not have to pay taxes on a lump sum, and as long as they begin taking their own, well, first off, they have to set up the IRA as an inherited beneficiary IRA and properly titled that way. Then the assets in the parents or whoever the deceased brother or sister's IRA get transferred into your beneficiary or inherited IRA. As long as that transfer is done correctly, it's now in your beneficiary or inherited IRA, and you are required to take required minimum distributions every year for the rest of your life, but over your life expectancy. So that allows you to defer most of the taxable amounts of all the distributions into the future. So you're taking little dribs and drabs of money every year as an RMD, and that's it. So you might only be taking 1% out of the account. So the account may be earning 3%. So here, you're not draining down this account in that situation. The account might actually be continuing to snowball and grow over your whole life. And yes, you can name your own beneficiaries in those accounts. And one more time, upon your death of that IRA can go one more time to your named beneficiaries, and they enjoy the same tax benefit of stretching it out over their life expectancy too, if that's done properly. So that could be a multi-generational tax strategy, which is a high benefit on IRAs. Obama wants to take that away. We've seen provisions be put into Congress to try to take that away. But we still have that benefit right now on inherited beneficiary or stretch IRAs, whatever you want to call them. So when I ran across this article, I thought I'd talk to you about that and remind you about these inherited IRAs, that they still exist. And this article goes on to say some of the details on that too, which I just explained. Now, the other one that I pulled was August 2016, and its first article says, Shifting Gears from Save to Spend. Now again, this is Kiplinger's retirement report, so it's oriented toward retirees and pre-retirees. One of the big discussions I see discussed, I hear financial advisors and financial planners for all of my career saying, you'll spend less in retirement, so you can plan for spending less in retirement than you need in your income earning years. I've never subscribed to that theory. And I'm sure I'm wrong in some cases, but I believe it's better to plan for needing more and then not needing it subsequently than plan for needing less and subsequently and maybe unexpectedly needing more for medical expenses or unforeseen inflation costs or prescription costs or something like that. So, or helping grandchildren or children who might need help. They're having trouble with their mortgages. So I like to err on the side of planning for needing a little more money every year due to inflation going up and having more than I need as a retiree than I would the reverse. So this article goes into one of the strategies on, well, you might not need as much. So I'm just cautioning you on that because my belief is it's better to plan for needing more than you need. And I just thought I'd share that with you. Now, I probably won't get through this whole issue on the show, but here's an extraordinarily interesting article and issue. I've run into this before in real life. 401k death benefits. They go in on this article. This is the August 2016 Kipplinger Retirement Report. And it goes in here to say federal law comes into play on who can inherit your 401k. Be careful on this. When we see divorces or deceased spouses, here's what it says. When President Reagan signed that rule into law in 1984, well, what law? This is 1984 now. This has been in existence a long time. People are still following this issue up. Here's where the article starts. Federal law is strict when it comes to what happens to company retirement plan assets if a married participant dies on the job. The retirement, and actually it's even after that, if the retiree, post-retiree, still holds their assets in a 401k, because the 401k laws still apply as opposed to rolling it over to their own IRA. So we even have to be careful then. But here's what it says. The survivor gets 100% of the account if they're a beneficiary on the account, unless he or she has specifically waived the right. And when a worker takes a retirement plan payout as an annuity, he or she must choose a plan that will continue lifetime payments to their surviving spouse equal to at least half of the original benefit in the amount. A spouse can waive that right too, but must do so in writing. Now here's where it gets interesting. Again, when President Reagan signed that rule into law in 1984, he proudly declared, this article says, no longer will one member of a married couple be able to sign away survivor benefits for the other. All right, good intentions. Here's where it goes. The protection for a surviving spouse is so strong that it can trump properly named beneficiaries, as demonstrated in a 2011 court case. So everybody listening and watching who has a 401k, pay attention here. That case in 2011 involved a worker who, after his wife's death, named 3 children beneficiaries of his 401k. Simple enough. We all would do the same. Dad later remarried and within a few weeks died. Despite the fact that the kids were named on the official beneficiary form, the second wife argued and won that the law said the money was hers. The best laid plans. Know the rules, know the laws, what should have happened, what could have happened. This article goes on to say, even a prenuptial will not undo this. So it says this ironclad rule can't be undone by a pre or post nuptial agreement in which the spouse forsakes the benefit. The prenup won't work because the spouse, not a fiance, has to waive the benefit. A postnup is useless unless it's followed by the spouse actually signing a written waiver. So the dad was single. He didn't have a spouse to sign a waiver. But prior to getting married, you talk to the new spouse, and the new spouse says, yeah, I don't want your kids' money. But they have to properly sign a waiver. So you get to the 401k plan administrator, you properly sign the waivers, you make sure your attorneys are reviewing all of this and making sure it's done. Your tax preparers and your financial planners all working together, and that's how things don't get messed up. All right, folks, thanks for letting me share with you. I appreciate you tuning in to All Things Financial. Hope I helped you with some of these issues. See whether you have them in your own lives. Give us a call if you do. We'll be glad to help you through them. Again, All Things Financial. This is Jack Driscoll, and I'll be back again next week.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and registered investment advisor. Insurance services offered through Driscoll Insurance and Financial Services Inc., which is not affiliated with SagePoint Financial Inc.